Hello, slimes and non-slimes alike. Rosie here, and this is going to be a much more discussion/rant video than what I usually make, as the issue, or I guess more accurately, the topic about whether or not the Judgment should be accessible has been on the rampant rise, as Otzdarva had released a video saying that the Praetor Needler add-on should be base kit for the Judgment upon their release. And if you haven't already, PixelBush has made a response video to Otzdarva's video, basically providing a counter-argument to all the major points that Otz does in his video. So if you haven't already watched either of those two videos, I'll be leaving links in the description to both of them, as well as providing a brief summary of what is necessary to understand in this video as well. So don't feel the need to have to click off and go watch those videos to understand. I'll be providing a brief summary here. So Otzdarva's video's three major points is that the Judgment is an extremely high skill floor killer to get into, and that this provides accessibility issues for both controller players as well as the wider community. PixelBush counters these arguments by pointing out that controller players don't have that much of an issue by citing multiple controller players on Twitter, as well as pointing out the fact that the Judgment has a unique setting found within the beta options that allows you to adjust the sensitivity of just their power and how it controls. Something that hasn't been seen in any other killer, but something that Behavior has told us that they were going to implement on this killer way back during when the killer was still in the voting phase. So there is that to note. And it is something that I also noted within my first video of the Judgment, and how I myself have not had really that much difficulty using the power. That being said, PixelBush's argument for why the wider community not being able to play this killer isn't that much of a problem very much differs from mine, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about it. But it basically boils down to how it's thematic that a killer who is all about devotion and such requires devotion from the player. And that's mainly where his argument stems, it being more thematic for the killer being difficult than an actual accessibility issue. However, I have a vastly different opinion on this issue entirely, hence why I'm still making this video. With the summaries out of the way, however, I'll go ahead and quickly sum up my opinion on the accessibility issue concerning the Judgment. As I've already stated in PixelBush's summary, many people on Twitter have stated that they don't actually have that much difficulty playing the Judgment on controller, myself included. So I'm not going to go too much in depth about why we should make Praetor Needler base kit for console players, because that's just kind of a stupid point to make in the first place. However, the other argument is whether or not the wider community should have this killer more accessible. And here I need to talk about something that I've been wanting to make a short about for a while now, but I have decided since to just make it a full-blown video instead. The silent majority was a term that was coined by, I believe, the Mr. Headache when talking about 2v8 and its extremely long queue times. How Behavior constantly seems to coddle 2v8 to survivor players despite it being horribly imbalanced for killers, and constantly extend the game mode every single time it comes in, despite rampant complaints from veteran communities. I point this out because the silent majority did not participate in the Grimoire, and I actually can back this up. So if you don't know, the Grimoire was the series of votes that decided how the Judgment would turn out upon their release, and well, we got what we wanted, sort of. The Ray of Retribution has undergone several changes since its initial implementation, so you could argue that the power wasn't exactly how we wanted it to be, but for the large part, most of what we voted for ended up coming into the game as we expected it to. What's important to note, however, is that during the Grimoire vote, the runner-up for the power, for what the Judgment's power was going to be, was not a dash ability. What ended up winning was a range ability, but the follow-up was a control ability, aka a trap killer like Skull Merchant or Trapper. This surprised even the developers, and I think a large portion of the community that voted on the Grimoire. We see this again happen with Aurora. The choices for what the survivor would look like was between an old lady and several hot white women. And naturally, everyone thought that, the basic hot white woman like Sable would end up winning. However, once again, that's not what ended up happening. We instead got Aurora, who is far more interesting and not conventionally attractive. A vote that basically surprised everyone. And I believe I know why that is. The silent majority just didn't participate in the Grim War. We can see this actually happen, as many people have jokingly said that the Dead by Daylight community is upset at the killer they voted for. However, it's important to note that the community of people who are complaining about what we got in the Grim War chapter are not the same people who actually voted on the Grim War chapter. What I believe happened was that the silent majority, the majority of players who, don't log in every day nor follow Dead by Daylight on their official accounts, likely are completely unaware of the Grim War votes in its entirety, and thus believe that the Grim War chapter, the Chorus of Sin, is in a completely original behavior chapter. Because of this, they complain like every other chapter behavior puts out, as they don't really know many better, to say the least. Despite the fact that they had the full ability to shape how this chapter turned out, because the casual community does not particularly, participate in the wider dedication of, logging in every day and checking the socials of the official behavior account to see the Grim War votes, they are completely unaware of how this killer is shaped. That being said, what does that mean for who actually did participate in the Grim War chapter? Well, the people who did participate in the Grim War chapter are the dedicated player base. The people who do log in every day to check their inbox to see if the Grim War vote had opened. The people who do follow behavior on their official accounts to see if the Grim War opened. The people who spend their days logging into Dead by Daylight and playing it non-stop. The people who have quite literally made playing this game their job. That is who ended up voting for the Grim War. That is who shaped the Judgement and the Chorus of Sin chapter as a whole into what it is we see today. I point all of this out because when we take this into consideration, the silent majority did not even want this killer. So why should this killer be made to cater towards them? My main argument here is that because the silent majority did not shape this killer, it shouldn't be catered to their ability to play it. Have this killer have an extremely high skill floor so that the dedicated player base who did participate in shaping this killer, who did participate in this community-wide event, can have what they wanted. And that's basically the gist of my argument. The build you see me currently running on screen right now and has been playing in the background for the entire video is what I believe to be a more beginner-friendly version of the build, utilizing the Prayer Kneeler add-on that we discussed becoming base kit, as well as another add-on that extends the duration that you can hold down the casting by an additional 25%, meaning that it goes from like 3 seconds to closer to around 4. It gives you a little extra wiggle room to decide what to do with your shots, and it's largely just a really comforting add-on for newer players, I think. The build in general is very cheap, as it only requires you to unlock both Wraith and Nurse's add-ons, and Corrupt Intervention from Plague, which is, a paid character, but until they rework the general add-ons until they rework the general perks coming this October, I'm not going to make a free build for the Judgment until that happens. So, yeah. That being said, that largely concludes my main points that I wanted to bring up in this video, and so I'm just going to leave these last few minutes completely without commentary. So, yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time. Cheerio.
no more. When will you learn?